A warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to the Lester Vaughan Secondary School and to what is the final consultation on the topic traffic management, the way forward. Our previous consultations were exciting. We were able to have a wide variety of solutions, a wide variety of solutions, and of course discussions. And so I'm sure that this evening will be quite the same. I'm Antoine Williams, and allow me now the pleasure of recognizing the Minister of Transport and Works, Senior Coordinating Infrastructure, Kirk Humphrey. I also recognize the Minister of State in the Ministry of Transport and Works, Dr. Rommel Springer, Permanent Secretary, Jehu Wiltshire, Deputy Chief Technical Officer, Design Services, Jason Bowen, and Treekirk McCarthy Brooms, who's sitting here next to me, Chief Licensing Officer of the Barbados Licensing Authority. So this evening, we will hear from you. We will note your questions, your concerns, but more importantly, we want to hear what solutions you may have to share with the panel as we look at this topic, traffic management in Barbados, the way forward. As you present, I am imploring you that you make your presentation as brief and as concise as possible, ideally within 3 minutes. It would be good if you can just get straight to the point so that for the responses, we don't lose any of what you may have said in your individual presentation. I also want to recognize our online audience, and those of you who wish to offer submissions, you're free to do so. And you can offer those submissions by emailing information.unit@publicworks.gov.bb or WhatsApp number 266-3780. And of course, you in the audience who may not be so inclined to offer your presentations in person, you too can do so via email or WhatsApp. So it is now my pleasure to invite Minister of State, Dr. Rommel Springer, to offer opening remarks.
Thank you, and good night to everyone once again. Firstly, I want to thank those of you who made the effort to come here tonight. When on my way down, I noticed that the area was all covered in smoke, which says to me that there's a grass fire or some kind of fire somewhere nearby, but yet persons took the time and made the effort to come here, which tells us that matters of road safety and road congestion are not abstract issues for persons. They're not abstract issues. They are real concerns that we face every day that affect our lives, affect our businesses, and affect our quality of life. And tonight's consultation is special because it's the last consultation in a series of consultations which you would have done right across the island. We started in the south at the Dayton Griffith School, and then we went on to Princess Margaret in the east, followed by St. Michael's in the town area, and then we went down north. And in the feedback that we got from those engagements indicated to us that we should really come into the heart of the country, into St. Thomas, because we know that some of the issues of congestion, diversions, and so on and so forth are felt very acutely here in this part of the island. And the fact that this is one of the last meetings tells us that we will have to use what we get from this meeting, combine with the other meetings, and use that as a moment for learning, for consideration, for reflection, and to direct us going forward. Over the past weeks, we have listened to the voices of persons, ordinary Barbadians, drivers, pedestrians, business owners, transport operators, normal residents. We have heard the frustrations. We have heard of the long commutes, the unsafe crossings, inconsistent road behavior. We've heard of the daily stress of navigating our roads. But we have also heard solutions that were grounded in lived experience, solutions that are community-driven. We have had a diverse of solutions, really. So this exercise tonight is not about ticking any particular box. This exercise is about directly taking what we learned and using that to form the basis of our decisions going forward. Whether that be improving the traffic flow, strengthening the enforcement, because we know we have issues with that. We may have to relook some of our routes. We may have to look at some of our regulations, because we understand that a sustainable solution will require partnerships between us as a government and you as the residents of Barbados and the residents of St. Thomas. And we're going to have conversations like this one if we are going to move forward as a country. So I encourage you tonight to speak freely, speak your mind, be constructive. Just don't think about the problems that you face every day. We all face them. We all drive on our roads. But let's look at focusing on some of the solutions that you will want to see for Barbados, for a more efficient transportation system, more efficient road network, things like that. You want to, just let us hear your solutions. So together we can move forward and we can turn all that frustration that we've been facing into workable solutions. With that, I will pass back to our MC for tonight.
Thank you very much, Dr. Springer. And just before I allow the Permanent Secretary to offer a recap of what has taken place over the past weeks, I want to take the opportunity to recognize Craig Archer, sitting over there, Project Manager for the Ministry's Roadworks programs. And for all of the consultations, we were honored and privileged to have representation from the Barbados Police Service, and tonight is no exception. And so I recognize members of the Barbados Police Service. Of course, you know that arm is extremely important when we speak about traffic management. I now invite Permanent Secretary to offer a summation.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here once again. This is our 5th meeting. And I must tell you that the public has given this ministry a lot of work in terms of the many submissions that have been received both by email and by WhatsApp. In fact, some of the submissions have been extremely detailed. There was one 30-page submission. Another submission was 25 pages. So you have given us a lot of work, but good work that we are looking forward to do. So my summary is a reflection of the main points and suggestions that have been made at the first 4 public meetings. And they cover a number of areas in terms of traffic management measures, infrastructural development and urban planning, school transport, new modes of transport, public transportation, measures to reduce the number of vehicles on the roads, safety and enforcement, road quality, and standards. So I'll just give you a brief synopsis of these submissions. Now, some submissions have been very, very specific, targeted really in terms of traffic management, specifically in relation to junction improvements. We have had suggestions for the review of the timing of traffic lights at several junctions, and the need to be to accommodate only right-turning traffic at several junctions, especially those junctions that are the cause for a lot of the traffic congestion. One popular suggestion was the painting of yellow box markings at roundabouts to prevent motorists entering those roundabouts and blocking traffic. We have had suggestions for the implementation of more medium U-turns similar to the lollipop turn at Warren's. The installation of traffic lights at roundabouts. And one suggestion, which is quite popular actually, is using the hard shoulder as another lane when approaching roundabouts to accommodate left turning traffic. We also have suggestions for no right turns at peak periods into congested areas such as Wildy, Six Roads, and Haggett Hall. And one suggestion is for the need for wider junctions to accommodate left turning traffic. Then we have suggestions for dedicated lanes, specifically in terms of dedicated bicycle and pedestrian lanes to promote, as one person said, as several persons said, a healthier Barbados, as reflected in the very popular Trailway project in St. George. And of course, bus lanes where space is available. There have also been suggestions for dedicated one-way lanes, which could be implemented at peak periods, a suggestion that the ministry is seriously considering. And of course, one person suggested the designation of a full zonal policy for children who live close to schools, who will go to those nearby institutions, rather than, as one person suggested, leaving Bayfield and St. Philip to go to Leicester Vaughan School. Infrastructure development and urban planning. Several suggestions. Okay, there have been persons who have made suggestions for overpasses, some against. The construction of more roundabouts to accommodate right turning traffic. Several suggestions really for the establishment of a grade separated light rails or monorail system over the APC highway to be integrated with the overpasses. One strong recommendation is that the ministry needs to give serious consideration to a wider planning horizon, let's say for about 20, 25 years, particularly for emerging town centers such as Six Roads and the implications for traffic congestion in those areas. And of course, we have a suggestion for the conversion of two-lane highways into four-lane highways where space is available, such as the Waterford Road. In terms of school transport, one popular suggestion, an exclusive school transport system for students, which the ministry is also giving some serious consideration to, as well as a park and ride hub for school children, since we recognize that school run traffic was seen as a cause of peak hour gridlock. In fact, we recognize that when schools are out, traffic is easy to get to your workplace. Then, of course, there have been suggestions for new modes of transport, the establishment of a ferry service and water taxis from Oasis to Bridgetown and then to Speightstown. And then in the realm of public transport, we have had suggestions for the provision of real-time tracking of buses, and the Transport Board will, I believe, be launching an app shortly so that commuters may know when the buses will arrive at their particular destinations. One suggestion is for the creation of a hub and spoke system where high-capacity buses will serve major arterial routes between hubs, and then you have the smaller PSVs who would operate as feeder services on the actual spokes. In the realm of policy, suggestions for the restriction or the reduction of the importation of vehicles, recognizing that we have over 181,000 vehicles in the island, which really, and I believe within the next 5 years or so, we actually be going over 200,000 vehicles, which really is unsustainable. Of course, there have been suggestions for the reintroduction of work from home policies and staggered work hours, and the provision, actually one person suggested that companies should be granted tax concessions to implement, if they implement work from home policies and staggered working hours. One popular suggestion was the establishment of park and ride sites, especially near shopping centers. Another suggestion that has been implemented I understand in London, that a person said could be done in Barbados, is the implementation of a toll system to to enter Bridgetown and other town areas. One recommendation which garnered some support at one of our meetings was the government should seriously consider the distribution of even and uneven numbers on license plates so that motorists will only be allowed to go on the roads specific days. And the person who made that suggestion recommended that you can take 50% of the traffic off the road on any one day if you implement that suggestion. In relation to safety and enforcement, it was suggested that there needs to be more rigid enforcement of the road traffic regulations to curb the behavior of some PSV drivers which discourage public transport, the construction of more sidewalks, the installation of more streetlights, and improved lighting at major junctions. And the last area that was covered is that the ministry needs to address the paving of roads in terms of addressing the raising of manhole covers at the same time so that we do not have, as one person said, engineered potholes. But the ministry is embarking on a program to raise the potholes, particularly on roads such as Highway 1. And another area is the modernized asphalt mix design that will lead to greater durability of the roads. And one last measure that we are actually implementing is an accelerated pothole patch and curb program across the island, because as several persons pointed out, if you have particularly large potholes on the roads, that could actually slow down traffic. So those are more or less a synopsis of the major suggestions and concerns that have been raised at the last 4 town hall meetings, as well as the suggestions made online and by WhatsApp. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, PS. It is now the turn of Jason Bowen, the Deputy Technical Officer, to offer a presentation that I'm sure will be of great interest to you as it looks at traffic management in Barbados, especially in this particular area. So I now yield control to Jason as he offers his presentation.
Hello, good night. I want to say thank you all for your support and the comments and solutions which you guys have offered over these last 5 meetings. And I look forward for what other comments and solutions that you may offer today. I just want to let you guys know that all of these solutions we're going to take on board as many as we can. We're going to review everything, and we're going to select the best solutions, especially ones that will take us to a more sustainable transport future. All right? So really in today's presentation, we're just really focusing as close as possible to this general area in terms of the areas that may affect you. It's not too many, but we will focus on those. I've shown this slide here at the other presentation, so I'm not going to go through this with any detail, just to say that we know that the traffic speeds in the country are very slow. And as I said, some speeds as slow as 5 kilometers per hour and on many of the major highways, and that's the average speed across on these highways. All right, and on this slide, you can see this is data that is obtained from the app Waze. You can see some highways that are in red. They correspond to even some of the highways which I would have shown just now. The ones that are in red, those correspond to highways 7, highways 1, the ABC highway, and I believe the Round Map highway as well. You can see that those are the roads which the highest amount of congestion that we find in the country. All right, everyone from in this area should be familiar with the Lears-Canewood junction. You can see on the photo on the left, that is the one that is on the AM period, but actually the photo on the right, that's the AM period. And with that one, you can see the deep red areas that is representative of the existing highly congested areas. This information was obtained from the app Google. They provide typical and live traffic data. It's a heat map essentially where the deep reds represent areas of significant congestion, slow moving traffic, and you can see the areas where the traffic is extremely slow, and it is all representative on mornings. The Canewood Road itself is full of traffic. Also the Lears Road as well, going towards that Lears Canewood Junction, it's always full of traffic on mornings. And then on evenings now, on particularly the Canewood Road, traffic there is exceptionally congested. It reaches further than Platinum Drive in the Cane Garden area, much further than that, sometimes even reaching the small roundabout in that area. So significant congestion occurs in these areas. This is just a photo of the same junction, the two junctions, the Lears Canewood junctions. This photo shows now the same heat map of the Hothersill Junction. You can see the areas with deep red, which correspond to the congestion. We know that on evenings, if you look at the photo on the left, that's the evening traffic. You can see the deep red, which is stretching back towards the Warrens area. We all know that there's significant congestion there, and that part is partly caused due to the backup which occurs heading towards the Kelsey Junction. And we know that that happens because traffic is being blocked, not able to get through the junction in that area. This is one of the areas where we are looking to use one of the suggestions that the people, had suggested to us with the yellow boxes. We're going to look at putting those in place to see how that can help with that situation, all right? All right, there are three broad approaches. You can look at capacity expansion, traffic flow optimization, demand management. So in terms of the capacity expansion, we can look at things like adding more lanes. We're looking at the Ronomac Highway, we're looking at widening that to 4 lanes and adding additional lanes there. We're also looking at adding more roundabouts, improving roundabouts and some junctions across the country. We can also, in terms of traffic flow optimization, the PS had earlier mentioned that as some of the suggestions that the public had also indicated and that is simply just rephasing the traffic signals, trying to make them more efficient in terms of how they currently operate. And in terms of demand management measures, we could look at pricing, we can look at vehicle restrictions, and that type of stuff, right? But there are also other things such as parking, improved parking restrictions in the city area, and controlling that. You have areas in town where parking is literally free, so it is something that encourages persons to go to town. We can look at that as well as another area for control of traffic. There's also, in terms of public transport, if we want to get to a sustainable future, we have to look at improving our public transport. Public transport at this point in time, we know that an hourly service is not a very efficient service. We have to move away from that. If you go anywhere in the world with reasonably good public service, we're looking at 10, 15-minute headway times between buses. An hour between services is not something that we should accept. We need to improve on that. All right, a possible solution. We had mentioned the Canewood-Lears junctions. Well, currently there are a series of roads that persons are using to bypass the ABC Highway. And it stretches from the Canewood-Lears junction straight down through to the Windsor Junction, and in fact, it goes further than that. It ends up by the Lowland Junction. What we are proposing is that we're going to look at all of the major and critical junctions along these routes and seek to improve those junctions so as to reduce the congestion that is happening along these areas. So at the Canewood-Lears Junction, we are already looking at constructing possibly a roundabout at that location, well, the two locations, to be honest. Or the other location would be at The Lower State Junction, that's another area where there's significant congestion. We know that that's a difficult area. And then we are going to construct a roundabout at the Windsor-Brighton Junction. So we're looking at linking up all of these junctions by providing means of control which are far more efficient, far more safe, so as to allow for traffic to flow, right? And that will help to ease the congestion that's occurring on those roads as we speak. Okay, with this, on this slide, as I said, for a better and more sustainable future, we have to look at improving the bus system. So we are looking at things such as park and ride, and also a hub and spoke type solution. These are things that in concept, we are now discussing, and we're looking at bringing things on board like this so as to improve transport in the country. So we're looking at areas where we can have park and ride sites, integrate them with hub sites where persons can go using an express service to go between hubs. And then from the hubs, you can then use a smaller unit which will take you to your localized destination. So with something like that, you would require something like a transfer ticket or something so as to get you to your destination. So it can't be just simply a one. We have to move away from the one bus everywhere to a situation where it may take two buses, but the point is we're looking at greater efficiencies, all right? As the PS had mentioned and persons had mentioned, one-ways, possible number of different one-ways that we can utilize on our roads, and one-ways tend to be far more efficient than two-way roads. One-ways allow for greater flow, greater throughput. What they do, they minimize the amount of movements at junctions as well, which allows for them to become more efficient, all right? Even with the one-ways, one can also reserve a lane with them to either use as a bus-only lane. So again, further enhancing the public transport that we want to improve. All right. So here, again, as I said, in terms of solutions for the public transit system transformation, establishing a mass transit authority that will bring all of the public sector and the private sector vehicles under one body where they will be properly scheduled. And obviously continue the ongoing upgrade and modernization of the bus fleet. We have to relook the routes that we have. Again, if we're going to do a hub and spoke type situation, we have to update the routing structure. We're also looking at cashless and information platforms. Again, we mentioned the park and ride hub, park and ride sites. In terms of road network optimization, adaptive smart traffic signals. Again, we have a number of new. We're going to roll out a new set of traffic type signals, which are controlled by our artificial intelligence architecture. They use sensors which will, when they detect the traffic, in fact, they don't only just detect the traffic, they actually monitor the traffic flows and will make adjustments and recalibrate relative to the amount of traffic, not just simply the presence of traffic, but the amount of traffic that is present at the junction. We have to start looking at things in terms of active and shared mobility infrastructure programs. So we have to improve the overall sidewalks in the country. There's not enough sidewalks. There are too many important roads which do not have sidewalks. So that is not something that is encouraging for persons to, it's not a mode that is encouraging for persons to use. So things such as this and bicycle lanes, where possible, we will also be looking at implementing, all right? All right, folks, well, I want to say thank you very much, and I look forward for all of your comments, and I now hand everything back to the Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you very much, Jason. Jason Boyne, Deputy Chief Technical Officer, Design Services, for your comprehensive presentation. We are here at Lester Vaughan School, and as Dr. Springer referred, the heart of Barbados. And I know those of you who are here who are residents who have to travel in this area, I am sure there's agitation, there's concern, there's frustration, and there's hope as to the roadworks that we are seeing in the general area. But of course, your concerns are addressed, and it's at this time now that I wish to invite Mr. Craig Archer. I introduced him earlier. He's project manager for a number of the roadworks programs in the ministry. Be so kind to join us here at the high table so that he will now give you an overview and, of course, address your concerns.
Yes, good night. Thank you to the panel. Good night, audience. In this general area in St. Thomas, the CAF Roads Rehabilitation Program that I am managing incorporates two different roads. One is the Shop Hill Road up to Content and Pori Spring, starting from Lester Vaughan School. On that road, which is just outside here, the works are taking place in 3 different locations at the moment. One in Cane Garden, just outside Lester Vaughan. Then there's work taking place in the Sustainable Barbados, by the Sustainable Barbados Recycling Center, Scrapman Junction. From that junction back to Content. And then there's another section from Fortress Hill at the moment to the Content Junction, which is where works are taking place. The work started in the north, and in that area, Fortress Hill to Jukes Hill, the contractor is scheduled to actually carry out paving next week. So that area of road that has been closed for some time should be reopened in about 2 weeks' time. Basically, the rehabilitation program for roads, these roads, involves widening of the road, introducing or adding sidewalks, either on both sides or on one side, and then significantly improving the subbase of the road so that they will not be failing in 5 years, much longer lifespan for roads. Introducing significant improvements to drainage infrastructure, which would be wells, a series of suck wells connected to box drains, and so on. So the fact that we're widening the roads has introduced challenges for the contractor because in several areas there are utilities that are in the way that have to be shifted. So water authority pipelines in certain areas have to be moved. In other areas, the utility poles from Light and Power have to be shifted. And the associated cables have to be relocated first by Light and Power, and then at lower levels, if there are any poles, if there are any cables from Digicel or Flow, those have to be shifted as well before the poles can be moved. So in terms of the Shop Hill Road, the entire road will be completed. The entire road will be completed by the end of the year. The other road in this area, which is undergoing a similar rehabilitation, is the Bridgefield to Jackson Road, which is being undertaken by a different contractor. And they started basically near the junction with Hangman Hill and is progressing south. In that particular road, there are other challenges. There are not a lot of bypasses available, so the contractor has been in the Bridgefield area, and there too, a significant length of road will be paved again in over a 3-day period by the end of next week. About 650 meters of road will be paved. And then once that is done, then the work will be shifted into the Bridgefield area and then move southwards. So obviously these roads, because, as I had indicated, because of the complexity of the work, it is taking a little longer than had been originally forecast for the reasons that I had indicated earlier, having to shift around utilities and so on. But the contractors are moving as quickly as they can, and we hope that the public in this area understands and will appreciate that there's a lot of work that has to be done very carefully, but in the end, the roads will be much improved with proper drainage to prevent flooding, localized flooding in areas, and also when it is completed, like for example the Prior Park Road, which has been recently reopened, it will be much improved in terms of traffic flows. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So have you heard
I trust that was
Sorry?
very helpful. Sorry, Chair. I trust that was very helpful in terms of the road conditions in the immediate vicinity. I know many people were asking how long these roads were going to take, and so I want to thank Craig for explaining. I should also say that we spent the last 2 days on the road looking at all these road works. And for those who are not intimately involved in road works, people may say, why is it taking so long? But having just done the tour and recognizing the intricacies of getting it done, sometimes these things take longer than they should. But I do accept, however, that there are areas of planning that we have to do better, particularly with the utility companies, to make sure when we start to work, everybody is moving in the same direction at the same speed. Or what we're going to have is we're going to find ourselves tripping over ourselves in our attempts to deliver good work to the people. So we have, yes, to be able to do better, but there are legitimate reasons sometimes why these roads take a bit longer than they ought to take. But our belief is that by the end of the year, the majority of the work in this vicinity right here will be completed. I think the other thing we have to do, particularly for the people who live in this area as well, and those who travel it, like myself, the other minister here, we both live in this area, is to be able to communicate when we're going to close roads, before we close the road, and to give people enough time before they get to the point where it says detour. Because you drive all the way down to the detour, and all the possible angles that you could have taken off the road to save you a lot of time, you'd have already passed. So I think we have to be able to communicate with the public in a way that says, hey, we got a lot of respect for the public. I think we also have to communicate the challenges that we're having. If we say a road is going to finish by June 1st, and it is September 7th, then the public needs to know before June 1st that the work has to be extended. And then we have to give regular updates as to why the road is taking so long and so on. So there are things that I think we're learning as we go along, but I give the public the assurance that going forward, the communication is going to be a lot better. I want to thank Craig and all the team. I want to thank the MTW team for the work that they would have done. And I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening. I do hope we have a meaningful, engaging conversation. I see my good friend Faith Marshall Harris is in the audience. We've worked together on a lot of child protection, so I know it's going to be about road protection, I imagine. But I'm happy to see you here, and I look forward to the engaging conversation. Sorry, Chair, but back over to you.
That's all right. Thank you very much. Well, you've heard from the members of the head table, so it's now your turn. For those of you who have expressed an interest in offering a comment or submission or solution in that regard, you were given a slip of paper, and there's a number on that paper. So I'll call the numbers as you come to the mic in the middle, and then you offer your presentations. Be reminded to make them as brief and concise as possible. Question 1.
Good evening. I am Manfred McKenzie. I'm with the Barbados Trailway Good evening, all. I've made Barbados my home. From my accent, you may be able to tell that I am South African, and in South Africa we have a word for this sort of thing, which I want to thank the Minister and the team for, this collaborative interaction. It's called an indaba. So being here at this indaba is making me feel more at home, so, and I thank you. So we know that the solutions are at our fingertips. We've heard from the experts. We at the Barbados Trailway are also aware that there are expertise within government and at this panel and in this room that can be contributed towards solutions. I'd like to highlight the physical development plan on the town planning website. It clearly states that the physical development plan is looked at as a framework towards infrastructure development, towards mobility. In fact, Section 2.4 of that same PDP highlights the importance of mobility, the importance of accessibility. My question is about the same PDP, and I'd like to ask the panel, the Minister, to what extent the PDP is being used as part of progressing any future solutions. Thank you.
Yeah, the PDP is the first thing I must say in terms of the development of the PDP. That is town planning would be the person, they're the guardians and they're the ones who would have developed it, but they would have used a wide cross section of stakeholders in the development of that PDP. So from industry, from even the Ministry of Transport and Works, there are all various stakeholder groups who are involved in this development of that plan, and that would have taken into account, or at least tried to take into account the development plans for the next, let's say 20 years into the future. So a lot of what we were looking at, as I mentioned in terms of the hubs and park and ride, some of these things, and active travel and so forth, all these things are included in the PDP as well. So yes, it is something that is there, and it is also being used in terms of to guide future development.
Thank you very much, Minister.
So Minister Cattle now has responsibility for planning. And she and I met, and we've agreed that a lot of the infrastructure work now is going to be about forward planning. In fact, because I have responsibility for infrastructure, we've said, and she has responsibility for planning, when we meet, a lot of our focus must be on forward planning, so that the idea that the infrastructural development must locate itself within the context of the physical development plan, which really articulates the vision. So if you stray too far from the vision, then you have the country pulling in opposite directions. So I think one of these regular items on our agenda is going to be about the physical development plan, to what extent we are able to fit in. I also think that the physical development plan, though, must not be seen as a static document unable to grow. So as we develop, we might need to go back and make some amendments also to the physical development plan. One of the challenges, I think, with the way we do business in Barbados is that when we create a document, and we put our faith in that document, when the circumstances change, we don't change the documents that guide us. I've seen it since I've been in this ministry and other places in relation to standards. We set standards, and despite how the conditions may change, we stay very loyal to the standards in the face of changing circumstances. And there's sometimes a need to go back and adjust the standards. And so there might be a need to make changes to the physical development plan, but our new one is relatively new, only a few years old. I think it's 2023, so it's fairly new. I think it is very forward-reaching. And so that is going to be able to set the context for our development going forward in terms of infrastructure.
Thank you very much. Number 2.
Hi, good evening, panel, Minister. My name is Aitchison Clark. I live in the Holders Hill area. So this hub is my general outlet. I have a few suggestions. Number 1, make from Kelsey's to Lear's one way, heading to the country. That way, people that are coming down doesn't cross the traffic that is coming up. So it'll be a consistent flow going to St. George or going to the country. That is number one. Number two, Salters Junction, I would suggest the same thing. Make those one way from Monday to Saturday, and just allow for public transport. So when you come to Salters Junction, instead of people having to cross you, that is a consistent flow going to Dash Valley. So that would ease up the traffic flow then on Norman Hills roundabout. From Salters to Tower Bridge. Right? So that would stop the traffic from having to cross in that area. Everybody following this so far? Good. The next suggestion would be in Warrens. I can't for the life of me figure out how you turn into Shelgat to Saul Warrens, and you have to cross 2 lanes of traffic. Right? And then to exit, and legally to exit Saul, you have to exit 2 lanes of traffic. You should be made to go up to the roundabout by KFC, turn, come around, turn in the first left, exit, close to the roundabout. Right? I can't figure out why that. Right? That is number 2. That is number 3, sorry. If I have to leave home between 4:30 or 5 o'clock in every afternoon, I go through the dump, I travel Hangman Hill, Vaughan, Jack in the Box, and I go through Prout, Applewood. Now I've been living in this area for about 15, 20 years. I've noticed in Jack in the Box in particular now, it's moved from like 5 cars to right now you got about a quarter mile of traffic. And that is in peak hours, right? Because everybody is avoiding the highway, right? So that is the new bypass road. I think I don't know if people come out and see these things, but for example, Hyman Hill Vault was repaved. It was done as a bypass road, nothing wrong with that. It was poorly done, right? I don't think that money was well spent. I think it could have been, if not out of concrete, you know what I mean? But it's a bypass, yes, but it could have been done properly. Now all the shoulders in Vault are broken down, and it isn't, that road can't last another 2 years, but it was just paved, right? Makes no sense. And my final 2 suggestions are pet peeves, I might say. Who's responsible for checking the widths of the roads now that we're redoing them? Because, for example, if I come to Prayer Park is small. If I come to, that'd be Jukes, I come to Jukes where the new road is being done, I have about 3 foot of sidewalk on both sides of the road and a little road, right? I can refer the same thing to Erie Hill Bottom in St. Joseph, where the road was, you went, right? And you're doing a new road. I mean, you put in a road, you had bridge that you could have cut away to make the road wider. No sidewalk in that road yet, and that's a one-way road. I don't know who's passed these things, but these are things I need to looking into. And those are my suggestions.
Thank you very much. Jason?
Well, I must say thank you for the, I welcome these suggestions. I very thoughtful. I mean, the Prayer Park Road being narrow and Erie Hill, that is something that we had discussions on even up to today. And that is something that in terms of we can have to start reconsidering and this is due to the classification of the roads. Those roads are, I think they're 5.5 meters wide, that is their standard width. And Prayer Park Road is really a residential road. So that's why you would see a road like that with that type of width. But I guess when one has to also look at its use at this point in time. So Prayer Park Road is not just simply a residential road. It is a road that persons are using, heavily trucks, all kinds of traffic. So that is something that we can have to reconsider. So the ministry does take on board your point and so forth. The Saul Warrens, I must say that is something we are aware of. That is one of the quick wins that we are going to look at within short order to address. The 2 one-ways, there's a good solution, so we can review them and have a look at and see how best or what is the best solution for those areas that we can implement, all right?
I think you would have mentioned Hyman Hill. And you recall that we are doing Highway 2A, Highway D, which is Bridge Fee Road. We're also doing Content to Short Hill. And we had to create in very quick time a divergent road for vehicles getting in and out of that area. And sometimes when we are in a situation where we need to move people, we cannot always get in the proper designs for roads, especially roads that were meant to be temporary roads. And that Hyman Hill was really meant to be a temporary road just to provide access whilst we work on the two highways, the two adjacent highways. If we didn't do that, then persons would be trapped in that area coming from that part, Jack in the Box Gully in that area. Or we would have had to do one road, which is the one there, and then do the one afterwards. And you see this one is taking 2 years. So that would have been pushed back 2 years. So what we did, we made a decision in ministry to create that bypass road. At first, just for cars to get through. Now we're using it for buses, and it's going to be heavily used for the next couple weeks as we push to do those two roads that were badly needed to be repaired. You can if you want.
Not that I don't appreciate what you're saying, right? But my thing is, I don't think that there's enough, I will call it ground staff, or people that actually go out and see what's going on the roads. Because literally, right, that road has been used even before these roads were being done. That was a heavily used road for people that are leaving Highway 2A to avoid the highway traffic, right? So I'm saying if you were repaving it, even if you're not using asphalt, concrete is cheaper than asphalt. I know these things. You understand? They going up. No. But I know there's a point in concrete was cheaper than asphalt, right? But if it's cheap, if it's more expensive, you can understand. But what I'm saying is, if you got most of roads break down at the shoulders, you understand? Even repaving the roads in terms of the designs and so on, if you put 2 foot concrete and then pave that on top of that, at least the shoulders will be stronger. You understand? But then we pack marrow, put up the sidewalk, and then when the trucks pass, then they break down. You understand what I'm saying? So that's just my suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear now from the person who has number 3.
Good night to the head table. My name is Stephen Archer. The disclaimer earlier, Clark, I work for a construction firm. This has nothing to do with this construction firm. This is personal. All right? I come from the land of Bobby. I come from Crapley, St. Lucie, right? Where the water is brown. All right? All right. All that aside, I come to take this traffic management in a different direction. And it's all about the construction of roads, right? 85% of the roads in Barbados are not designed for the type of traffic we have, right? It's not designed. Back then, the old-time engineers did not have the equipment that we have now. So what they did in building the roads was something called interlocking, where they scratched off the top of the surface and they put 1 inch or 1.5 inch stone at about 2-3 inches, and they dead rolled it, and then they used colas and chip to finish the road surface. What they used to do to maintain these roads would be to come in every 6 to 8 months, and they would come and put on another layer of colas and chip and seal it. I would know about this because I am fairly old and I used to have to go to school barefoot, right? And when I come home, my mother would have to take the oil, the kerosene oil lamp, and wipe it off my foot because I couldn't go to bed like that for the night. You understand? So therefore, a suggestion. Now, this was done in the area where I live. around election time, around 30 years ago, what the person who was trying to be elected did was they came in and they pulled a dragma of asphalt, a very thin layer of asphalt over the existing road. And it lasted for over 30 years. Right? A thin layer, no more than about a half-inch or 3/4 of an inch. Right? Where they put in the patches in the road first, and then they pull this layer over the whole road, and it lasted for over 30 years. Right? I suggesting that some of this could be done in order to alleviate a lot of the potholes that we have in Barbados until we have the time to repair these roads. Right? Next thing, I am in favor of flyovers. We should have had flyovers from 2008, 2009 when they were suggested. But vision, where there's no vision, the people will perish. Right? Way back then, Mr. Adams had the vision to build a 4-lane highway from the airport to get traffic to the port. Then I can't tell you right offhand who had the vision to build the highway from Malina to Warrens, right? But the section of road there on Highway 2A is being done now, which was projected to last 15 years. At the time it was built, lasted 30 years. 30 years. The company which is here on my shirt did that work. 30 years. And what people don't understand about asphalt, right, is that in the beginning, it is very flexible, it's new, right? But as it gets older, traffic running on it, you know, it does not expand and contract the way it does when it gets new, when it's new. So therefore, it breaks. And what should have been done maybe 5-10 years ago, that surface should have been removed and a new surface replaced. Even at this point, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the subbase at that road, right? But Transport and Works somehow decided that they want to carry out an experiment. So what they're doing, they're using a technique which the Chinese have introduced to Barbados, where they're mixing marl fill and cement, which gives you a sheet like concrete under the road, right? Okay, it's an experiment, right? But at this time, I don't really feel it was necessary because the road has proven itself to be in good condition because it lasted 30 years and a lifespan, we had a lifespan supposed to be 15 years, right? I don't think you can ask for much more than that from a road, right? So basically, we need to look at our road infrastructure because the amount of vehicles that we have on the road and the weight of the vehicles, the roads were never designed for anything like this, right? The SUVs, the heavy-duty trucks, right? And that sort of thing. Well, I was at the last meeting at Alexandra, and I heard people speaking about concrete roundabouts, right? What people don't understand about concrete roundabouts, if we were supposed to try to replace all the roundabouts in Barbados with concrete, a roundabout would be out of use for close to 4 months. You can imagine trying to take out a roundabout in Warrens and it being out of service for 4 months. The roundabout at St. Patrick's was built out of concrete when that road was being designed. And the only reason it was able to be facilitated at that time, one, the traffic in that area was not that vast at the time, and two, they had alternative routes around the roundabout. That roundabout took 4 months because the infrastructure, like the cables and that sort of thing, cannot be placed under the roundabout, because if you have interruption in the service, you have to dig them up, right? So therefore, you will have to look for space around the roundabout to put down these services, or you will have to look at building precast roundabouts, where you would build the roundabout and bring it in place and put it down, right? So that if the government of Barbados won't go into concrete roundabouts, that would be the most feasible thing to do. Precast roundabouts, come and put them in place, right? Slabs or whatever, and if there's a problem, you can remove the slab, do what you have to do, or put it back. All right, as for traffic flow now, only place in the world that you have traffic that run in both directions. Almost every road in Barbados, 90% of the roads in Barbados are two-way traffic. My suggestion would be one-way traffic, as not the same one-way traffic. We look at entrances and exits to major areas like Bridgetown. Whereas on a morning, say if there are 6 roads into Bridgetown, 4 roads will be carrying traffic in, 2 roads will be carrying traffic out, because that's where the flow would be major in. And on evenings, it will be reversed. When the traffic is flowing out of Bridgetown, you have 4 roads taking it out, 2 roads bringing it in, right? That would alleviate the interface in the traffic, which obviously slows down traffic and reduce the amount of serious accidents, because head-on collisions are the most serious collisions you can have. And that would be along the line of safety.
Okay, thank you. Is that your final comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your offerings. I'll now allow members of the head table to offer their respective responses.
Well, I just wanted to, well, the one-way solution, that is something that, again, we will be looking at. But relative to what you had suggested in terms of the road maintenance, that is something that we are looking at, relooking the way how we actually carry out maintenance. If you were to look at the deterioration curve, you will find that as time goes along, the rate of deterioration on roads increases. It increases rapidly. So the thought process is not to wait until the road is old and cold before you intervene. We need to intervene a lot earlier. You don't wait till you see the cracking. You don't wait till you see the road starting to, you get depressions and all that in the road. You need to intervene earlier. So your suggestion in terms of overlay on the road, that is something that we were looking at. We had tried something in the area from the airport, in the ABC area from the airport to what that area name? Coverley. That is a slurry seal that we've tried. It's a type of overlay type mixture, but it's not a full overlay, but it's just something to protect the surface. The sun itself, you got to understand the asphalt, the bitumen itself is an organic material. So once the sun hits on that, it causes the material to get hard over time. So that's where you can get the material become brittle. So at the end of the day, we need to protect the road from the sun's rays as much as possible. So the earlier we intervene, it is less costly, and you will now extend the pavement life much longer. So those are methods that we're going to be looking at going forward. All right.
Yes, sir. I just want to agree with what you said. I know you quoted a number of around 85%. I can't say if it's 85% or not, but I know that a lot of our roads were not designed for the type of vehicular loading that we are seeing today. Certainly, the types of trucks that we see on our roads and the weight of those trucks on our roads, the number of cars, electric buses are also heavy. We know that our roads were not designed for those vehicles, and our roads are now under a tremendous amount of pressure because of this particular phenomenon that has occurred here in Barbados. So I take your point that we now have to look at perhaps more resilient ways of building our roads, and that's perhaps why the ministry have taken the position that we're going to design our roads, and we're going to design our roads with resilience in mind. And that's why some of our roads here, especially along, if you use these roads here, Content, and to some extent Bridgefield, and certainly the road that we're doing in Crab Hill, I thought you were going to mention that, where we go in with the belief, like we've been hearing for many years, that if you scratch off 2 feet of soil anywhere in Barbados, you'll find rock. But what we're finding, when we're building our roads, that sometimes we go down as far as 8 feet and 9 feet and still no rock. And we found out that in Prayer Park, and we saw it here in Content again, and now we understand we're experiencing it now in Crab Hill as well. All right? And certainly in Scotland District, you can go down 30 feet and you won't find any rock. But we knew that. But we're finding it here along this stretch of road here. So these are things that we have noticed, and we have to build our roads to a certain standard. You know, if we can go down 2 feet and build a road on whatever subgrade we find there that is suitable, then fine. But in many cases, the subgrade or the indigenous material is not suitable for resilient road construction, and we have to take decisions to go deeper, and that usually takes a longer time and comes in at a much higher cost. So that's perhaps why some of the roads take so long to complete. It's not as simple as just scraping off the surface and then replacing that surface. Then you also mentioned that you're seeing where we have infused the sub-base, the marl, with cement. And you said it was a concept that was introduced to us by the Chinese. I suspect the first instance where I recall certainly seeing that technique being used was on the East Coast on the Edinburgh Highway, where we felt that road, that sub-base on that highway required a bit more rigidity, a little bit more resilience or strength than what we would have done in the past. And that's where the idea for the introduction of cement was, I think that it was first started. And then we've seen it used on other occasions, certainly on Highway 2A, it's being done down there just to help strengthen that sub-base down there to give us a stronger road, because we know the type of vehicular loading that we get on those roads, that road and on some of our highways. So these are things that we would have, through a ministry within our own internal teams, we would have come up with to attempt to remedy some of the problems that we've been seeing over the years where roads were failing in quick time.
Like major highways, we would expect that the sub-base would be cut to a certain standard. But the same technique that the older engineers used back then, right, can be used for some of the secondary roads. Whereas you do not have to cut to 8 feet and put in marl fill. If you cut to at least a foot and a half, and you put in stone at first and interlock it, it acts as a sheet where the stone interlock, it does not sink. And then you put your sub-base on top of it, and then you build your road on top of it. And it should last for generations. Because if the 2.5 inches or 3 inches that the older engineers use can carry the weight that it should not carry, if we go a little deeper and we do that and then come back up with a sub-base, the roads should last. Right? And that will be done for mainly secondary roads and that sort of thing, roads that are not carrying the peak of the traffic, which are feeder roads, where you're having a lot of pothole issues and that sort of thing, right? That would be used for those sort of roads. And the major roads, which are expected to carry the big excavators, and because we are not stagnant here in Barbados, you know, we are developing, and we have every single type of car that was made in the world, we have one here, right? 30 and 40 ton excavators, so you have to have something to carry them around. So therefore, we need to look at the infrastructure, right, and do better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. And you'll be happy to know that we are codified and upgrading our standards to future-proof our road infrastructure. But thank you so much for your suggestions.
Number 4.
Good evening, members of the head table and visitors. Sorry, my name is Vaughan. I live in the, yeah. I just want to make a point about the road over here, the HL King Garden Road here that's being done. And I just want to know why, you know, it's built in such a way that it doesn't allow for an additional lane. Noting that when you're coming from the HL area, you have the Reese Road that you can turn into. You have also the entrance to Lester Vaughan School as well. And then the turn here at the end, there don't seem to be a dedicated lane to make the left turn here at the junction. And we have to remember that when the Shop Hill Road is concluded and the Bridgefield Road is concluded, that you have more traffic moving back into this area from persons coming out of the countryside, especially on this Bridgefield side, person be coming out to St. John, St. Joseph, St. Andrew, using the road heavily in this area. And you can't have persons coming to the junction here sticking up unless you plan to put either stoplights or something there in place. But I believe a third lane could have been developed here on this road because there was land here. I don't know if you had to acquire it or so, but I believe that could have been done as a possible solution for this road here. But I'm glad to see that there is drainage along the road. My next concern, and this is from Mr. Archer, who spoke earlier about the Bridgefield Road and said when you're concluded to the junction at Rugby, you're coming into the Bridgefield area next, right? Noting that the area doesn't have any exit points, how do you plan to manage the flow of traffic into that area and for the residents who live in that area and stuff? Because I generally am in that area like every day. So I want to know how you can deal with that issue in terms of if you're going to have create some access for persons in and out of that area, and if you're also going to have a meeting with the residents of that area to let them know what the plan is for the work in that area. I also note here on this area going up to King Garden to the police station that there was some marfil used in the potholes going up the road. There's some marfil in the area that get rain every day, right? So you ran out of patching material. Okay. We need to communicate that to the public.
I think you would want Mr. Archer to offer his comment. Would you want to wrap up at this point in time?
No, I still have 1-2 more points to make. Yeah.
All right.
But Mr. Archer, he can address when he finish. In the Warrens area, the gentleman behind, he suggested the roundabout at the Sol gas station. That is a good solution to have persons use the roundabout rather than exit and block up the road to go into the gas station. Also, there need to be some other solutions for that whole service area because there are a lot of industries through there and commercial activity. And generally, you find that even although you might use that as a cut to get to the gas station or to even get to Highway 2A, you're still in traffic at peak times, especially in the evening periods. And the other areas there by the Warrens, the Eunice Gibson Polyclinic, to make that right turn into PriceSmart. Another general area that is gridlocked almost every day. And you need either to make the traffic goes to the next, the four-cross junction by PriceSmart and make the turn there. So rather than to have traffic keep bottlenecking that area all the time during the day. A suggestion I would like to make, the ridge along the ABC Highway from the Warrens area by the Baobab Towers from the bottom there, if you can use that ridge to create a road, I know there's a gully somewhere in the middle there that you might have to go use a bridge or something like that. But I'd like to suggest if you can cut a road going over there as a bypass road that can take you into the Friendship, Bethel area back into Hustle turning, or so around the playing field area, so that you can actually take some of that traffic off the highway and use that area. And then the opposite direction, coming from Waterford back to Friendship and Warrens, there's a side road there, which is basically what people use for learning to drive, etc. If that road can be extended and be brought into the Friendship area for persons who live in that area, to take some of that traffic off the highway too as well. By the Kelsey supermarket, I believe that a one-way, sorry, not a one-way, but to take traffic from making that turn, that right turn by Kelsey's, rather than let the traffic continue on the ABC Highway to the Bell Junction and look back in from Lower State and then enter back into Hustle turning, making the turn only for buses, for public transportation, making that right turn only for during peak times. That would be one of my suggestions as well. We also talk about planning ahead and stuff. And we look in this Warrens, this general area, actually, you see a lot of development in terms of industry. Every day you see something new going on. I believe also there's also a plan to put a senior home here in the Edge Hill area too as well. How do you look at the traffic management? Because if you're if person's going to acquire houses and you have developments and all these things going on in this area, then reducing the number of vehicles on the road have to be a priority. Because if you're planning down the road, you cannot tell us, okay, we have 180,000 cars at this point, then the next 5 years you got over 200,000 or so, which means you're not actually managing the problem, but you're actually exacerbating the problem to a point then where, you're frustrating persons. Persons become frustrated because of the number of traffic. So I believe the priority should be looking at ways of reducing the number of vehicles on the road any given time. The idea of having park and ride should be something that I have to go into place ASAP in order to make people become comfortable in using that type of service. Because if we wait till like 5 years then to introduce our next 2 years or so, you can still be back to square one. People can still be complaining also. So that's my...
No, we're just thanking you. I know that you're about to wrap up. In your comments, you did pose a question, and I will allow Mr. Archer to offer a response.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Specifically regarding the King Gardens Road, the design, the road that is going to be, when it is rehabilitated, will be a little wider than it is now. But the priority for the designers that was given to them by Ministry of Transport and Works was that the priority was for the 1.5 meter sidewalks on either side for pedestrians. So because of the proximity of the school, the school, and then the businesses on the other side, there's obviously you can't go any wider if the priority is given for improving pedestrian safety in that area. You'll have to live with the single lane of traffic in single lane traffic in the two directions, right? So that's King Gardens. So it was a design stipulation by the ministry, and that's what the engineers designed. Regarding the Bridgefield traffic management plans, when the contractor gets to that area, there will be smaller chunks of road that will be taken out of service for brief periods of time, and that's why the Hangman Hill bypass was so important to get completed as quickly as possible. The ministry took a strategic decision to quickly and temporarily pave the road, understanding that it was only going to last a short period of time, but it was important to improve that road as a bypass, so provide people when the road works in the Bridgefield area moves south of the residents there, they will have to move north and divert through Hangman Hill to get where they're going. Obviously that, because it is their residences through the village, the contractor can't take large swathes of road out of service. It'll be shorter and managed, and there will be further consultation, I'm sure, arranged by the ministry to inform the residents what is happening and when. Hope that helps.
Yeah, and relative to it's a good suggestion that in terms of a third lane at the junction by I can't remember the name of the road right now, but yes, that's a good suggestion. But we generally monitor all roads as well, all junctions, and when it is warranted, right? We just don't go and just increase for just increasing it, because these things are costly, and that is something. But we do monitor, and when it is ready, there are various methods that we can do to improve. You did offer a suggestion you could signalize that junction, that you could easily use a quick two-phase signal system, and we can bring order and control to that when the time is required. So it is not as though that it is not being monitored. We will do something when it is warranted, and implement a solution that is fit for purpose for the area. All right.
Thank you very much. And may I remind you, especially our online audience, if you have your submissions and you wish to send them, you can email information.unit@publicworks.gov.bb. And the WhatsApp number, you can also send your submissions via WhatsApp. And the number is 266-3780. I now invite our penultimate number, that being number 5.
Honorable Ministers, Permanent Secretary, and other officials of the Ministry of Transport and Works, and the fellow citizens. My name is Faith Marshall Harris, fierce advocate and champion of children, not just here in Barbados, but all over the world. I almost decided that I should not speak, having heard the other submissions, because I'm taking this in a completely different direction. Because I can imagine that right now you're groaning and wondering what has children got to do with this. But let me explain that children are defined here internationally as human beings between the ages of 0 and 18. And I'm also here to say that this is an issue that affects children significantly And I believe that the two gentlemen at the top table, whom I presume to call my dear friends, will be truly on board with me. I've been listening to previous town hall meetings and consistently have heard that our traffic woes are substantially to do with the fact that when children are in school and they're being dropped off, this is causing the major traffic congestion. Now, I understand that this has been addressed before. I heard that earlier, but I'm here also to give my 2 cents worth, because I don't want children to become once again the scapegoats. And I thought I should come to this particular location and particularly soon discover why with my suggestion. So I understand the ministry is well ahead of me in this one, and have actually started to work on this particular idea. But I thought by articulating it, I can add some value, if possible. I am recommending that, of course, we have a dedicated school transportation system. Note that I say school transportation system and not school bus system, because whatever you design, whether it's by monorail, by water, by air, by whatever, that you consider that a transportation system for children going to school should be an integral part of it. So if it is more feasible to get some children from one part of the island to another by water, then it shouldn't be off the table. But whatever you do, I'm asking that it be of high quality, specially designed and dedicated. And I not only suggest dedicated, but rigorously policed. I'm using the word policed advisedly, not necessarily for the involvement of the Barbados Police Service, but by synergies with the Ministry of Education. We designate a well-trained, child-friendly wardens or supervisors on each transportation mode. Well-trained, that is, in child safeguarding and discipline. The persons operating the system should be of strong moral purpose, role models in terms of their conduct, speech, and decorum that the children can look up to and learn. In short, our children must be placed in a situation where they understand that their education starts from the journey to school, which would get them into the frame of mind to start the learning process when they arrive at school in a calm and settled frame of mind. And I believe that those standards should encourage more parents to opt for using that means of transport, of getting their children to school, and therefore we could avoid some of the congestion. I know that, and I will expect to hear that we already have school buses, but from my observation, this is not of the standard that I'm speaking of, and I think you've only got to speak to those children who go to Allen School, Darrell Jordan School, or Grantley Adams School to know that what we've got now is not of the quality that I'm proposing. And this is why I particularly forced myself to come here to Leicester Vaughan. My next point is that if we can have that high quality dedicated transport, all school children should be forbidden from traveling on the ZR vans as long as they're still have this culture that they have now. You will no doubt remember that there were a few incidents recently involving Leicester Vaughan students and ZR vans. And that has triggered really my strong desire to be here. Let me say that many, many years ago, almost ancient times, while I was on the magistrate's bench, I repeatedly warned against the dangers of the ZR influence and what it was doing to the behavior of children who use them. So this is not a new plea on my part. What is happening in the ZR vans is not conducive to their use by children, and certainly not for the beginning of their school day. I am also asking that if parents insist on dropping the children to school by car, I feel that you should make special arrangements for a drop-off point not directly at the school gate, which is causing traffic congestion, but provide special laybys at a reasonable distance from the actual entrance so it can be an orderly process and that the cars can then rejoin traffic without too much disruption, and also ensure that the children have a bit of walking to do before they get into school. I want to take this opportunity to make another plea which might seem only tangential, but it does have some bearing on traffic. When I heard that the Graydon Seeley School was to move to the Ursuline Convent, I, for one, jumped for joy, as far as I can jump for joy in any event. I was thrilled at the prospect, and you may ask me, what has that got to do with traffic? Because I'm now hearing from adults in some quarters that this would be disastrous, because imagine having all those school children coming onto the congested Calama Rock and how it is going to hold everybody up, and therefore the school should not go there. I want to make a plea, and I want to beg authorities to think of the fact that this school, Graydon Seeley, is in a very congested area, which cannot conduce to their good learning environment. They need the space, and therefore I'm asking that you consider a different access, probably, to the school, and from the school, Ursuline Convent that is. I speak on the correction, but this could probably be onto George Street. But I really think that in the best interest of children, I would ask the ministry to have a close cooperation with the Ministry of Education to make that a possibility. And I would like you to really put some effort and your creative minds into ensuring this beneficial outcome for the children of Graydon Seeley. And let me say finally that under your present leadership at the Ministry of Transport and Works, you, Senior Minister Humphrey, I believe, can make most things possible. This has been my experience with you. This is not a party political statement. It is based on the confidence I repose in you and the history that we've had. And I believe that your can-do attitude, your usual competence, and the mantra that you always use, that I admire, people over politics, will mean that we should get a lot of these solutions accomplished for the people of Barbados and for the continued protection of children on their way to school. Thank you.
Thank you also. Thank you very much. Thank you. You certainly brought a different dimension to tonight's consultation, but of course I will allow for comments, and please acknowledge the operations manager at the Transport Board, Gina Boyce, who will respond to some of your comments.
Hello, good night. I appreciate the comments and I appreciate the statements about the dedicated school bus. I don't think you're the first person that mentioned it, and it is important. I also appreciate the fact that you realize we have to raise the level of it. It is not just a school bus, and sometimes it annoys me when people say, well, you have a school bus going there, because it's a system, and if we don't embrace and understand that, we won't get it. So when you look at the dedicated school bus system being administered anywhere else, as you said, it's for safety of the children. Maybe there's a warden, there is checks on who can carry our children. So as our drivers, persons have a vested interest in Transport Board, and there's this natural confidence that we vet, and put our staff to a certain point. So as you are pointing to have the dedicated school bus run and be outside of these at our culture, however that is done going forward in the future, it needs to have that kind of safety rail. So for the Transport Board, what we've tried to do over the years, we acknowledge that we didn't have all the buses. We used 3 of what we call our priority schools right now. We had to decide we couldn't get everything done until we got the injection of resources. And we identified a number of rural schools. Alling was one. They were in the papers many years ago about late buses, overly full buses, and we've been working with that school for a number of years. And year by year, we have resolved different challenges. So right now, we have about 8 to 10 buses that go there. We looked at crowding, coming through St. George, our Chalkymuk is too heavy, we put 2 buses there. Coming through Shorey Village, the children from there, it is too heavy, we've put 2 buses there. We recognize that we changed our bus design and the capacity has changed, so we had to put another bus there. So a bus that would before carry 40 children or 70, because the Road Traffic Act allowed for us to carry a little bit more in a school bus, but we want to look at comfort and elevate past that probably archaic as well policy. We are looking to add more resources to those schools, and we're working with those schools dedicatedly. So up to the end of the term, we met with Grantley. We know there's an issue. It's gone to the point that even the ministry, because we're working hand in hand with them, you're correct, we have to work with them. They said they can see, they're in the terminals, the truant officers are there to make sure they can identify those persons that might be getting into the wrong kind of activity so that we can work together. It was the principal, it was the ministry, it was transport board, so we could talk to persons who were not understanding the benefit of having these buses provided more regularly to them, how they were not utilizing them. They might be getting on them and getting off at other points. So there's a whole thrust to improve the dedicated school bus service. We are working with the ministry. I saw recently, I'm not sure it would have been there before, even if you look at school zones, somebody mentioned it before, when you get into a zone, how you will have to change the speed that you travel at. As you're indicating, in some areas, you might have to have dedicated drop-off lanes. But for every agency to look to see what we will have to do to make it safe, reduce the impact on traffic, so that we can do better. So as Mr. Bowen has said at one of his first meetings, we looked at this school just off of Top Rock. And a proposal was, where can you park the vehicles, the parents, so we don't go on block just outside of St. Lawrence Gap. And there'll be options there. So I believe that the dedicated school bus, as we're looking at it, we're not looking at it in isolation, as in Transport Board has all the answers. We're taking in the feedback from other stakeholders, like yourself, learning stakeholders, from the ministry and where they want to go and what they want to develop in the future, and we're building it out. And I'm sure that if we can't do it alone, you've heard a lot about the BMTA, there are options and how it can be done. It isn't just the Transport Board hourly service that is there. We heard the Transport Authority Director say there are at least 930 permits out there. And together we can get this off. So, but for dedicated school buses, we will be looking to enhance and improve how we deliver the service and make sure that the children get there in a safe environment.
Thank you very much, Faith, Mrs. Marshall Harris. Good night to your husband as well. My former schoolmate, we were at university together. So it's always good to see both of you. I should also say that one of the greatest, I think, pleasures and distinction of my ministerial life has been working with you on the Child Protection Bill, which I think will go down in history, perhaps, as the greatest piece of social legislation this country has ever seen. The way we took a bill that was 120 years old and modernized it to put protections in place for children. So I want to thank you for your work on that, because without you, we probably would not be here. In relation to the work on roads, I think I take the point that was just made by Gina. I think it's about the system. We have to make sure our children, the system is safe for children, which requires that our system has built-in safety, it has built-in discipline, but also built-in responsibility. And I have learned enough working with you and in the former ministry to make sure that children cannot be the most vulnerable on the road. Cannot be the case. In fact, at one of the previous consultations when we discussed this, I was very clear. In fact, if I could show you the video, you may think I sound exactly like you and that I was a good student. But I said exactly what you said, which was that if we're going to have a dedicated bus service, that we have to have drivers who are particularly trained, not just any driver, and that those drivers must be screened to make sure that our children are safe on the road. I think he also suggested cameras. People know when the children get on, they know when they get off, a system of reporting, because people have to feel comfortable putting their children on a school bus. In fact, today we were on the road. We went to Erie Hill. Somebody raised Erie Hill. We were down Erie Hill. We went all through the east, and I was saying to myself, looking at these roads alone, it's such a scary experience that, when a parent puts a child on a bus, this is a comment I made today, when you put your child on the bus, you're really taking a risk. and you're leaving it up to God in God's hands, so we got to give God the glory. But the roads, some of our roads alone, are so narrow. That's why I take the point that when we're thinking safety for children, we have to think about everything. Some of our roads, built to standards years ago, I hear the engineers, but I cannot accept what they're telling me. I hear the engineers, but I cannot accept what they're telling me. I cannot accept that some of our roads should be 5 meters. In some cases, we go 5. I can't accept that. I can't accept that our secondary roads, that are secondary roads today, that will not be secondary roads tomorrow, should remain the size that they are. I can't. It is as if, we are planning in some cases, but lacking integrating the vision that the country set out for itself. I can't accept that. And so I think we have to go back to the drawing board when it comes to our standards, specifically as it relates to children. I think we have to be very careful about what we expose our children to. And I think that is the fear with ZRs. That when children get on ZRs, they're exposed to dangerous driving in some cases. They're exposed to very lewd behavior in terms of the music and in terms of the behavior from the persons who work the vehicle. And that is why I think the Mass Transit Authority that we're proposing is going to be so important. That the Barbados Mass Transit Authority is going to give teeth to the persons who are in charge of managing those vehicles on a day-to-day basis. Currently, the Transport Authority does its best in relation to being able to take buses off, ZRs off the road and some of those buses off the road, but the legislation does not give them enough teeth. I think we have to work with licensing authority better. Maybe some of the responsibility that is that licensing authority should be with the mass transit to make sure that we are able to determine who is on the road and who's not on the road. But we have ZRs who make multiple infractions and nothing. So I think we have to be, so that the idea of safety and responsibility for me runs deep. The solution to ban the school children from the ZR is one because of the current conduct of the ZRs. I think what we really have to do is to improve the ZR behavior. Because I also think the ZRs offer a very good service to Barbados too. I wouldn't want to penalize them necessarily, but they have to improve, or that is the condition that I'm prepared to live with too. If you're not prepared to improve your conduct, then recognize that we cannot trust our children to you. So the ball is in their court. And I've said this much to the ZRs. The other point that you made about allowing children to do a little bit of walking, I totally agree. The problem with Barbadian society as we get older is that the average Barbadian today is 47 years old. 47. In 20 years, the average Barbadian at this rate is going to be in his 60s if everything continues as is. A country that old is going to have serious problems. But the bigger problem is that most Barbadians who reach a certain age have associated NCDs that they shouldn't necessarily have because of old age. But if you start moving earlier, that is why this conversation about traffic is a conversation really about moving, movement, people walking, moving people. So I take the point on and I agree with you entirely that we have to get our children to move. So I take the point, I agree with it as well. I think it's something we should plan in, as opposed to leaving it as an ad hoc thing. The last point that I want to raise, that you raised, was the Graydon Sealy School, which happens to be in my constituency. And I know that people had a very profound affection, particularly people who went to school there, for the Graydon Sealy and its current location. But if you know Paddock Road, first of all, it's a very narrow road that is in need of paving, hint, hint. But it's a very narrow road, and so we have to be able to improve the road, period. But the school itself is crowded, it is dark, it is literally sharing a wall with the paddock where the horses are, so the school smells like horses. So people who understand the reality of the school appreciate that we should move the school. And the space at the convent is a lot bigger, it's a lot brighter, it's a lot fresher. The government is committed to moving the children to the convent. That is not going to change. I think the conversation we're going to have is about, because my daughter went to that school. So I know when you turn in, you have traffic backed. That is a real concern. That backs traffic all the way to town. So maybe an entrance into the school somehow that's a little bit different, but to deprive the children of the footprint at the Ursuline Convent would be sin, in my opinion. And that is me losing a school in my constituency, going over to Marshall's constituency, but it's a school that I also have a particular affection for. So I take the point, but I want to give the assurance that we are not moving away from more responsibility for the children and to the children. So that is also going to be done. So I hope those address the concerns that you raised, but I think we are very much like-minded on all the points. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We go now to our final submission, that being number 6.
Good night, head table and guests. My name is Gregory Farnham. First of all, I've tried to get here. I've never made it, so I hope I'm not bringing up points that were brought up before. The issue, my main issue is the flyovers, right? Have we done any designs for them, even if they're preliminary, or is it just conversation at the moment?
Well, there were always designs, and pretty sure you were aware of that too. But there are always designs for flyovers. But we are working towards making sure that what is in place is fit for purpose right now. That's all. But
okay. The original designs, which I did see, were basically single lanes in and out. Right? I have many concerns with that. If you have a major accident at the top of a flyover, the one for Warrens is supposed to be from when you turn on, you can see the existing roundabout by Massey. So you're going to have a ramp from there all the way past the existing Simpson roundabout, going up the hill or going to, towards UE. So with that amount of raised, and it has to be raised to the height of the walkover by CBC. So if you have that amount raised and you have a single lane with a barrier in the middle, which it would have to have, and you have a major accident up there, how do you get all of that traffic off of it? You know, as I say, my concern is if it is going to be 2 lanes up there, it's going to be the potential for a major disaster. If you have a fatal accident, nobody can move that vehicle or that person until the coroner, I believe, and the police arrive. So if you have a fatal accident on the top of one of these single-lane highways, you're going to have traffic up there for God knows how long. Furthermore, you have to have a way of getting the traffic that's turning under the roundabout, under the highway, under the flyover, right? So if you have that, you have to have 4 lanes. You have to have 4 lanes coming to 2 lanes. 2 lanes going up and 2 lanes working underneath. You have to have, at some point, a divider. And we all know how Bajans drive. They're going to be coming through on that under lane and then squeezing back at the last minute. If nobody lets them out, that under lane is immediately blocked up solid. There are a lot of things that I'm not comfortable with having flyovers. The gentleman said he would like to see them. I would like to see them if the design is good, right? So my question is, if they do decide to go ahead with these flyovers, will there be, like, first of all, preliminary designs that we can see as the public, and then will there be consultations on the flyovers themselves? Because having a consultation like this, you know, where it's a general consultation, it doesn't really cover the issues that will be in a flyover. Like, you know, cycling lane, and how does the ambulance get to an accident up there? Does it reverse all the way up? You know, I've sat down and thought about this thing, and I think it is something that needs a lot more consultation than just saying, well, you know, we have the old designs, and I did see them. I saw the artwork. I saw the actual drawings. They're a total disaster, in my opinion. And that's just me, right? So in terms of that, I'm just asking if we're going to have some serious consultation about them, right?
Just before you continue, let me allow Jason to respond to you.
Problem.
All right.
yeah, just want to say there definitely will be. Well, we are currently reviewing what is there currently, but we will definitely have a national consultation on the flyovers, where you will get the opportunity to see what are the plans, and then we can discuss further anything else that is required. Right? But definitely that is part of our plans to have that consultation.
In terms of the Green Hill section by PriceSmart, the original design was a lollipop by PriceSmart, like the one that's up by Simpson Motors, and a big roundabout down by JL Galil or whatever it is, the BIM factory, right? But that didn't happen because of land acquisition. So unfortunately, the traffic in that area could be solved by those two roundabouts, a small one and a big one, right? That was in the original design.
Yeah. Well, it's still there, and we are going to be relooking that those proposals as well. All right.
All right. When you go to Kenwood, there is no parallel road from Kenwood basically to the highway. If we could put a parallel road to that, that would take, let's say, 50% of the traffic out of that Kenwood area, which would, huh? So the problem is there's a big gully going all the way down, right? So you either have to put a bridge or you have to do what they've done at Kenwood, which is, going down, right? But I'm just saying the amount of traffic that is on that road is because there's no alternatives, If we could put another road parallel to that, maybe coming out by Chafet's warehouse. I'm just saying, somewhere down there to take off half of that traffic, that would, that's just my personal feeling.
Yeah, just go ahead.
What we have, and I did mention in presentation, I don't know if you had seen it, but...
I came late, sorry.
Okay, right. So I did indicate that there is a road that basically from the same Kenwood area, in fact, it stretches further than that, where persons from there going all the way down to Windsor, Brighton Junction, the persons use that to avoid the congestion that's on the ABC Highway. And I suggested that what we are looking at is that improving all of the junctions along that route so as to improve the traffic flows along there, right?
Nice.
So definitely looking at that.
Real fast.
So you have a full list, but continue.
No. I'm almost done.
Okay.
I think actually that would be it. That'd be it. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you also.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And remember, if you want to offer a written submission based on your comments or you want to expand on them, you're free to do so by emailing information.unit@publicworks.gov.bb or by WhatsApp, which is 266-3780. That brings us to the end of tonight's PS. Oh yes, we're going to hear from PS now because he's monitoring the WhatsApp submission. So PS, you can kindly offer what you are receiving.
Yes, during the meeting, there are a few messages that came in by WhatsApp, and one or two persons asked me to read them. So this one here, the person said they're watching the traffic consultation on GIS, and they have a few suggestions to submit as follows. I'll read a few of them. Completely redo back roads and set up street lights. There are many alternative roads, but people avoid them because they are rocky, unsafe, dirt, or have potholes. A lot of businesses are operating in St. Michael. If possible, businesses need to have a reason to move closer to the east of the island, which will really help me because I live in the east, so I won't have to come to Bridgetown. Reduce bus fare and have an app that tracks all buses and vans, and the Transport Board is doing so. The app should also tell you what route and buses you should take to get to your destination. This should be helpful for tourists, new residents, and locals who may not be familiar with the bus system. It will also make the bus system more reliable. Parents should be encouraged, and this follows your suggestion, Mrs. Marshall Harris. Parents should be encouraged to let their children use the school buses. School buses should be in place for primary schools as well. Parents should be able to track the buses. It would also allow parents to rely on the bus and have a sense of security. The parents will be able to travel straight to work or continue to work from home. One other, let me see, 237. Just one sec, Chair. Yeah, 944. 23781. Gina Boyce from the Transport World, you wish to hear this? Remove and relocate all major routes to hubs or small bus stations. For instance, at Lower Green, the buses that usually follow the same route, Holders Hill, Shorey Village, Sturgis, etc., can go to a new route from Lower Green to maybe the area of Terrell Court as its final destination. At Terrell Court, persons will depart the bus and choose another bus going close to or to their destination. Each bus leaving from this location should only travel so far so that the bus can always be in a position to make it back to the hub on time. And the person goes on to say, Barbados, it's only in Barbados that people can use a bus like a taxi and get dropped off in front of their homes. As a commuter, being able to complete at least half of the trip can allow for the said person to be in a better position to get where they are going. There are a few more, but I will leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The final remarks, Minister? Minister is inquiring if there are any other members of the audience who may have a submission, a comment, a question. Yes?
Chair, just before you go, this person just indicated that his submissions never get read, so I will just bear give me a little indulgence. The person is here suggesting that that widening the highway between the stretch from Warrens to the Bell and also the gymnasium to the airport. 4 lanes. The first left lane going left only, the second left lane going left, but also straight. The middle lane, which is a third, going straight only, and fourth lane going right only. With these lanes, you have to know for sure which direction you will be approaching. The person is also suggesting down by Trent, St. James, can you put traffic lights down there? I think that should help with that traffic at the bottom of Trent. Please do something about this. A roundabout cannot work at the bottom of Trent because the road is not built for that. Traffic lights would be best placed there. And I think, and the person is also suggesting that the street lights by the roundabout by Flash Zone, where is that? Flash Zone at the bottom of UE, are out on the roundabout. So if the chief electrical officer is listening, we need to replace those street lights at that location. Thank you for your intelligence, Chair.
Okay, I will allow you now. Please take your name and you can offer your comment.
Good night. My name is Tony. Sorry to be so late. I thought it was actually going to be on Monday coming. It was when I was home sitting down watching it on the computer, and I thought, oh my gosh, I had something to say. Got up and ran up here.
We're glad that you were able to make it.
My only question, I don't know if it's really about traffic, but I'm always been concerned about the roundabout by Chafet in Warren. That little road that comes out from H&B, if you want to go, if you're coming from Chafet and you want to go into H&B, you have to cut across so many lanes of traffic to get in. And when you're leaving and you want to go to UE or back over to the same Chafet, you have to cut over many lanes of traffic to try to get over. Now there is a little road, not a little road, there's a road next to H&B directly. I've always wondered, why is that road not used as an entrance and an exit? Currently it's only an entrance. But I do not understand why all of these years, the road has never been used as an exit. And you would just go in there, go along to the roundabout, and decide which exit you're taking depending on where you're going. But you're sending traffic from H&B to try to cut across many lanes to get back where they're going. And I really want an answer, because I really don't understand it.
All right, well, that answer will come from the
Well,
from Jason Boy.
Yeah, honestly, that was purposely done that way. The ABC highway is what we call a limited access highway. It provides for high mobility. It moves close to 40,000 vehicles a day, right? There's no other road in the country, not like Highway 1 and the rest, that can possibly move anything like that. And that is so because there are few access points. What access points there are normally at those roundabouts. The more access points we place along that road, it's going to slow the operating speeds further along that highway, and it's going to defeat the purpose. That is what we call a strategic road. It is a road that moves traffic, right? All of the other roads generally are like roads that provide access. So you will see along Highway 6, you will see a direct access to a business, a direct access to communities. You're not going to see that along the ABC Highway. So if we don't want to add more access points in the area of Warrens to the ABC Highway because it will interfere with traffic flow, right? So I understand why you're looking at it from that point of view. That was only meant to be an entrance to get into the industrial area. That was just what that was supposed to be, but it was never meant to be an exit point, right?
You say it's an entrance, it's only supposed to be used for an entrance, and the exit is the one up by HMB?
No, there's another entrance. Yes. Yeah.
Or you can look through that same service road and exit by Carter's. No,
you can't go through that way.
No, I thought it's service road. Right, what I'm saying is, if you come from,
So just so you know, we're streaming, so the public is not benefiting from your wonderful conversation, though I am. But if you want to share your wisdom. No, don't be sorry. I'm just saying if you want to share, use the mic so that everybody can hear what you're saying.
Sorry, I was just saying that there is no exit. If you're leaving HMB, you can't make the right turn to go by in front of Simpson Motors. You're not allowed to. It's a no entry. Yeah. So you have to go to that lead off on the roundabout. Yeah. You can't. That's the only way you can get out from HMB and Williams Equipment and those places. Yeah. All right. I don't want to.
All right. Thank you very much, Minister.
I sense that you are not satisfied, but I think I've heard what he's saying. What we can probably do is have another conversation, a private conversation after this, because I sense what we just said to you does not necessarily satisfy you.
My biggest concern there, as I say, if you're coming from Shafat and you want to get into HMB, you have to come across like 3 lanes of traffic, I think it is, in order to get in the HMB if you're coming from Shafat. If I come from Shafat, I have to, I don't know if I take the inner lane or the outer lane, and then when I'm going over, the traffic that's coming from the same Simpson Motors, they're not certain if I'm turning or if I'm going straight.
What I heard the traffic engineers telling me is that we will review that entire area anyway. And that perhaps if we can address, because the crossing the lanes is a problem for everybody.
Yes.
For everybody. So I think we have to review it, and then perhaps when we reviewed it, then what we say in a month or so will be more satisfactory. But I also suggest you have a one-on-one after the meeting with Jason.
Yes, apologies for being so late.
No problem. I'm happy you're here.
Any other comments? If you've spoken already, okay.
Yes, I think the major problem is that people do not understand directions at roundabouts, right? As a former driving instructor, right? First thing, people do not understand roundabouts because they do not associate it with roads crossing. They see a circle and their head go wild. As a former driving instructor, I used to have two designs inside the vehicle for crossroad and a roundabout, right? I would put people to sit by the roundabout and I would tell them, look, okay, watch where this vehicle goes. Tell me in which direction it goes. And you would put the same people by a crossroad and they could tell you, but when they get to a roundabout, they can't. Right? Because there's a simple procedure for giving directions at roundabouts. Right? As a former teacher, the first exit is left. The second exit is straight. The third exit is right. Right? If you have a roundabout, like the roundabout at Simpson Motors, you will have left, straight, first right, second right, right away around. And the lanes you will use for doing this, you have 3 lanes if you're coming along the highway from Redmond Village. The left lane is for left. The middle lane is for straight. All the other directions are done from the right lane, and you have no confusion.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your crash course. I must tell you this. You tapped my memory, and I was trying to say, am I doing this correctly now? Okay, Minister, would you be so kind to offer the closing remarks?
All right, first of all, let me just say thanks to everyone who came out over the last 5 consultations. I want to thank the team from MTW who were here every night after working an entire day. And the last few nights, we've also been on the road during the day. I want to thank the team. In fact, make them feel special. Give them a round of applause. I was saying to the team at MTW very recently, we were on the road today with the persons from the depots and just all the staff, really, that the public isn't aware of the amount of work that they've actually done over the last few years. And perhaps I have to find a way to introduce the men as human beings to the public so that you could understand a bit more of the story of some of these men, how after you've been throwing asphalt a whole day, how you can't go in the shower, you have to go home and wait for your body to cool down, how these men have become, some of them, ill, working the way they've been working for the last few years, you know, how in difficult conditions, sometimes without the allowances that they used to get, they've still been working. So perhaps the public needs to be introduced to these men as human beings, and perhaps they would understand a bit more of the struggles that they face and the effort that they've actually put into the work that they've been doing, because they've done significant work over the last few years for the country. I also want to thank all the persons who provided services, the sound men, the video team, the police officers who've been with us every night, who came out as well. Just everyone, the scribe, who's been taking all of our notes. Thank you, Doc. Who's been taking our notes for the last few nights. And the public, those who came to the consultations, those who came, who sent comments online, the many people who stopped me in the supermarket. My supermarket trip now takes me 2 hours, and I buy very little things. You would be one of the persons we met in the supermarket and had a wonderful half-an-hour conversation. So I want to thank the public who's been really kind to us and to me over the last few weeks as we've started this consultation. I think the information that we've received has been so valuable. The other thing that I've realized is that there are many Barbadians with so much expertise in this area that we haven't properly tapped into. And many others who would have reached out to me on social media, persons with PhD in this space, persons who are working overseas, getting practical experience in this area as well, and the same workers who have so much knowledge, but we haven't really utilized that knowledge to solve some of our problems. So we're going to be doing a little bit more of that. Trust me, I know the frustration of being on the road because I'm on the road. For this particular area, I know it well because I take this area to get home and to move and so on. I also know the behavior on the roads, particularly by some in the PSV sector, not all, but some I know. And I also know that Barbadians are also sometimes very unkind to other Barbadians on the road too. I know that some of the problems we're facing could be easily eradicated if people would just be kinder to people on the road. You know, allow a person to come in. Today, for example, we almost had a situation where we were blocked off where, you know, people just refused to ease back so that the bus could pass. So, I mean, I understand those things, but if we check our own behavior too, we also contribute to the traffic. It is one of the most amazing things I find is when people complain to me about how dirty the country is. And I ask myself, how did the country get dirty? You know, like, what is the government doing to make sure the country is cleaner? Of course, we have to do our part, but why are people dirtying the country? Why are we still throwing boxes through car windows and van windows? So a lot of what we're dealing with has to come down to our own changes in behavior. I should also say to you that I'm very thankful for all the feedback that we got over the last few weeks. It is extremely useful. I think now we have this feedback. We have a clear direction from the public, because this was never meant to be a conversation for talking's sake. This was always about listening and then being able to act appropriately based on the things that we have heard. So hopefully we can move from consultation to some kind of consolidation and then to action. And I had promised that we would return in a month, so by the middle of May at some point, we're going to announce another conversation where we say, based on the information that we received over the last few weeks, this is the direction that we're going. I think we've reached consensus around some areas. There are things that still require some more conversation, but I have seen a policy take shape during the course of these conversations. And persons have been asking about our traffic management plan. I think this is going to help us inform the traffic management plan as we go forward. And I really want to thank the public for that. And it has never been the point to have a soliloquy of sorts. I never meant to come here and talk on. So most of the time we've been very quiet and just receiving the information. It's meant to be a two-way conversation. You've had access to the professionals in the ministry. The ministry has luckily had access to you to be able to come up with something that makes sense. But I think ultimately what we need is a different way of thinking in the government that recognizes the public has answers to their problems. You know, people, for the most part, are not passive recipients of goods and services. They're thinkers. They're doers. They know. And we have to appreciate that the public also has a role to play. So thank you for allowing us to shape government policy. We will return to you in a month. That has been our promise. We will share with you what our direction is. We promise to have consultations separately on the flyovers when that time comes, to be able to offer a more detailed response. But also, the flyovers was never the panacea for all of our problems. It was just one of the many things that we proposed, but it got the most attention. But of course, we proposed a whole number of things. So thank you. I want to thank all of Barbados. I want to thank those who are listening. The end of the official conversation and consultation doesn't necessarily mean for us the end of us being able to receive feedback. The number will still stand up, and I think, Chair, you could call the number and the email again at the end. The number will still be available. The email is still available. If you haven't been able to do so in the last few weeks, please do so now. And I suppose all that is left for me to say is a very heartfelt and sincere thank you to the public of Barbados for allowing us to have these consultations and for the information that they've shared. So thank you all very much. God bless and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Minister of Transport and Works, Senior Coordinating Infrastructure, Kirk Humphrey. We also offer thanks to Minister of State in the Ministry of Transport and Works, Dr. Rommel Springer, Permanent Secretary Jehu Wiltshire. You heard a lot from the Deputy Chief Technical Officer, Design Services, Jason Boyne, and also present tonight is Trika McCarthy Brooms, Chief Licensing Officer of the Barbados Licensing Authority, Craig Archer, Project Manager, as well as Gina Boyce, Operations Manager of the Transport Board. It certainly has been a pleasure. And I don't think, but we also want to thank the online audience. I think some of you followed us every consultation, every conversation, and you are reminded of the email address, information.unit@publicworks.gov.bb, and the WhatsApp number 266-3780. It's been a pleasure of my serving as chair for all of the consultations. Certainly been a learning experience for me as far as traffic management and receiving listening to you, the audience, as you offer your submissions. There's more to come, and as we often say, the work has now begun. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Travel home safely.